Welcome back, everybody, for my portfolio update for November 2024. And with the election behind us, November was a huge month for the market overall. So I'm hoping you saw a lot of green in your portfolio, because I definitely did, even though from an activity standpoint, it was a pretty quiet month for me. Now, the market in November was up almost 6% overall and ended the month up a little over 28% for the year in total return, which is just a huge number. But where did I actually end up for the month? Well, let's find out. Now, we're diving back into Snowball Analytics, and this video is actually as of December 1st, and my account is currently at $340,871 and some change. So if we take a look at the actual breakdown, I've adjusted this to see how we did for November only, and we see that my account is up over $19,500 for the month, which is actually my best month ever with this portfolio in terms of actual dollars gained. And if we look at the breakdown, we see that most of it, or $19,400 of it, was capital gains, with $142 of dividends for the month. And that's basically it, because it was a pretty quiet month for me overall. Now, if we compare my total profit for the month to my portfolio value, you can see that the difference is my $800 contribution plus some cents of interest that I earned during November. Now, in terms of performance, you can see that November really started going once the election results were known, and that's partially because the market thinks a Trump presidency will be better for growth, but also simply that the election was over. It removed a bunch of uncertainty in terms of what was going to happen next. And as I've talked about before, the market can deal with good news, it can deal with bad news, but what it doesn't like is uncertainty. But let's take a look at how I did against the S&P 500. Now, for the month, the S&P 500 was up 5.95%, accounting for the timing of my own buys and sells, and my portfolio was up 6.08%. So we outpaced the S&P 500 for the month by just 13 basis points, which means we're slightly better than flat compared to the index. But if we take a quick look at year-to-date performance for 2024, the S&P 500 is up 27.58%, and my portfolio is at 29.39%. So we've kept our little lead on the S&P 500 for the year, now a little under 2 percentage points. And just for consistency, let's take a look at the performance of my portfolio since I started it on December 8th, 2022. We see that my portfolio was up 45.64% compared to the S&P 500's 52.85%. So since inception, I'm trailing the S&P 500 by just over 7 percentage points in total return. And now last month, we had closed the gap to under 6 percentage points, but that was mostly a timing thing as the video was made in early November. But still, we made some really great progress over the past 6 months of the year, and I just think this is a really great story where, look, sometimes we're going to have to adjust because maybe the strategy that we created doesn't really align with our goals that we want to achieve, or like in my case, you create a strategy but you're not really following the core principle of it, and so you have to make an adjustment, you have to see how it performs, and then just hope that you get back on track. And I think at least what's happened with my portfolio in 2024, it's been a pretty good example of that. And we can see that progress clearly on the monthly breakdown. Our streak versus the market continues again this month, although just barely, but it means that my portfolios outpaced the market in 5 of the last 6 months since I made all the changes over the first part of the year. And like I say all the time, there's no guarantee that that's going to continue. If companies like Nvidia or Amazon or Meta start to underperform the market, then clearly my portfolio is going to underperform. But up until now, at least, we've seen some good progress. And if we take a look at my investment income, specifically for the next 12 months, it actually hasn't changed from last month at $1,962.74, which is exactly the same amount I had in October. And honestly, I don't think that's ever happened before where it was exactly the same as the previous month, but it just goes to show I haven't had a lot of activity this month. I didn't have any companies that introduced dividend increases, and any buys and sells that I didn't include dividend companies. And then lastly, in terms of overall dividend yield for my portfolio right now, it's at 0.58%, which, as you guys know, isn't really a focus area for me. But now let's actually take a look at what dividends hit my account over the past month. On November 8th, I got $70 from American Express in 4 different accounts. On November 14th, I got $39 from Apple in 3 different accounts. And then on November 29th, I got $33.60 from MSCI in 2 different accounts, for a total of $142.60 in dividend income for November. And now if we take a look at what I bought and sold for the month, and trust me, this won't take very long, on November 8th, I bought 10 shares of Cloudflare at $88.12 a share. And that's it. That's all the activity in my accounts for the month of November. Now, in terms of why I bought Cloudflare this month, Cloudflare's price action has been just insane. But after they reported earnings earlier in the month, the stock dipped quite a bit and got under $90 a share. And I just felt like the market overreacted a bit to their earnings, which overall I thought were pretty good. So I thought it was a nice point to pick up some shares. Since then, it's bounced around quite a bit, but still ended the month about 13% above my buy price already. So that's been pretty nice. And I've started to see more and more people talk about Cloudflare recently, which has been pretty cool. I'm excited to keep following their story and see if my original thesis plays out the way that I expect. So not much has really changed this month, but let's go ahead and take a look at my updated portfolio weightings. Nvidia is still in the top spot at over 16%, Amazon's over 15%, Visa shot back up into the top 3 this month at over 11%, Meta is next at exactly 11%, and Apple is at just under 11%. And those top 5 stocks sit at just under 65% of my total portfolio. Now, next up is Amex at just under 9%, McDonald's at 8.6%, Cloudflare now just under 6%, TSM at just over 4%, MSCI at 3.76%, and Google at 3.72%. Now, if we take a look at which holdings have performed the best overall, and remember, this is just price returns as I take my dividends in cash to reinvest manually, Amex is in the top spot at just over 100%, Nvidia at over 60%, Visa over 28%, Amazon over 27%, and Cloudflare at over 23% in just about 2 months or so of holding it. I have Google at over 17%, Meta over 15%, MSCI over 13%, McDonald's a little under 8%, and TSM is my lone negative holding since I added it last month, down about 6.5%. Now, if we take a look at what holdings performed the best over the past month, Cloudflare had the best month at just under 14%, Amex was up almost 12%, and Visa was up over 8%. Apple, continuing to defy all the value metrics, was up over 6%, MSCI up over 5%, Amazon also up over 5%, and Nvidia actually trailing the market this month at just over 2%. Meta was up over 1%, McDonald's was just above flat for the month, and then my 2 negative holdings were Google at down over 1% and TSM down over 4%. So overall, this was a really good month. I mean, any month where you're outpacing the market, even if it was just by a few basis points, but also earning $19,000 plus for the month is going to be a good month no matter what. So I'm not complaining. But let's go ahead and take a look at my top 4 for 2024 stocks. Now, as we can see, only one of my top 4 for 2024 stocks is still outperforming the index, and that's still Caterpillar, which has had a very nice bounce back over the past month or so since being down a bit in October. Now, Visa had an amazing month and is now back to respectability versus the index for the year. Now, while Valero had a great month, up over 8%, it's still trailing the index by a lot. And then, of course, Hershey, which I sold way back in February now, is continuing down in November and now down almost 6% for the year. All right, so let's take a look ahead to next month and what holdings I think I'm going to be adding to going forward. Now, in terms of ones I'd like to be higher in terms of weight, overall, I'm actually okay with where things are at in terms of allocation, but there's one thing that I've thought about lately, and that's the number of total holdings that I have. Because here's my question, like, is it meaningful to hold like a Google at under 4% of my allocation, or is it meaningful to hold MSCI at under 4% of my allocation? I don't really know the answer to that. Like, do I really need 11 holdings? I think in the past I've talked about that I could envision myself one day having maybe 5 or 6 holdings, but I just don't think I'm really there yet. Although I wouldn't be surprised if I ended up cutting some smaller holdings and putting those funds into other existing ones. But for now, I'm not really sure when or if I'm going to do that, and I'm pretty much okay with where things are at. Now, in terms of ones I think are the best value right now, again, we're talking about a market overall that's been up, 28% over the past year. So there's nothing that really looks attractive the way that it did earlier in the year. But just based on the valuation and cash flow growth numbers, I would probably still say Amazon, Meta, Nvidia, and TSM, which are the same companies that I said last month. But just like last month, I said that nothing in my portfolio was really a screaming buy anymore, and I was going to kind of pick and choose my spots, maybe try to hit some dips, and that's exactly what I did with Cloudflare earlier in the month. Because I didn't even have it on the list last month in terms of looking attractive, but when it dipped a lot after earnings, I just decided to scoop it up. So I'm going to likely take the same type of approach this month. But if I had to choose right now, my guess would be I'd add to something like Meta or maybe even TSM, but we'll just have to see. Now, in terms of what I expect to be doing over the next month, I'll be waiting on attractive prices on existing holdings just like I did last month, and then as we get towards the end of the year, I'll be reflecting on things, both good and bad, that happened throughout the year, as well as reviewing my strategy and 2024 performance to prepare for 2025, which obviously I will be sharing all with you. So like we do every month, let's review my portfolio goal and strategy. My goal is to beat the S&P 500 in total return while creating a growing passive income stream for my family. My strategy to achieve it, I want to attach myself to companies with wide moats that are generating increasing cash flow and rewarding shareholders with dividend growth that outpaces inflation, or share buybacks that increase their ownership stake in the business. So if we recap what happened this month, my portfolio was up a whopping 6% and just outpaced the S&P 500 by 13 basis points. Annual dividends were unchanged, and only one of my top 4 picks for 2024 is still outpacing the market. But Visa has made a nice comeback to respectability, with Valero and Hershey trailing by a lot. But overall, this was arguably my best month ever for this portfolio, and I did it in a month where my largest holding, Nvidia, actually trailed the market in terms of performance. So that's going to be a trend that's really interesting to watch as we go into December, because it's going to play a big part in determining whether we actually end the year outpacing the market or not, because it's really close right now. So we'll see what December brings. But either way, it's been a great comeback for my portfolio in the second half of the year, and hopefully we can finish it off strong for 2024. So how did you all do for the month? Let me know down in the comments below. Now, if you missed my video on what I'm expecting in the market for 2025, you can watch it by clicking this video right here. Hope you guys have a great day out there. Financial independence is true freedom, so keep building and stacking wins, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.